Welcome back. My name is Sean Hicks, so let's jump right in. So, week three was an absolutely entertaining week of football. And I think if you're one of the college football hipsters, which I probably am at this case, that you probably really enjoyed a lot of this is going on, right? Not really a whole lot of giant upsets, but would argue a lot of tier three teams, right? Not in the national championship running, not in the one that are trying to contend with them, had a lot of really good acid tests, this thing. And frankly, I would say they probably failed mostly. Though when we actually break down these game by game, we'll see that a lot of this was not the best team winning. And I'll discuss what that means for the future and what that means for conferences overall, specifically if we can get some 2007 up in here with the top teams. Spoiler alerts, we can't. The top teams all looked amazing once again from it. But as a week that was really frustrating probably for most of you guys if you weren't in the top tier. And me being a giant Michigan fan just coming off the Army game, I can say I was very happy to have a bye this week. Got to watch all of this from home as we got to watch, well, certainly not a blood week, but like, oh man, I need to get some stitches type of a week, which it tended to be. So let's jump right into the games. So again, real quick note, Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, all looked amazing, destroyed their competition, looked to be so much better than everybody else. Boring to talk about. When we get into the previews of next week, we can go into more detail. But yes, all of your teams looked awesome. This is kind of the hipster week of we're talking about week three stuff, so deal with it. All right, first let's talk about Maryland Temple. So in the preview of this week, I talked about this was probably the game I was most looking forward to watch, and it lived up really a lot to my expectations and a lot of how I would expect it to go. It was kind of a weird game in a lot of ways, right? So Maryland comes out as a underdog beginning of the year to Temple. And after their first two games, specifically just bombing Syracuse, they end up being like a 4-point favorite in the game. But, you know, as I mentioned in the preview, I was always a little concerned about that, as Syracuse is the type of team that Maryland's offense just explodes for a bunch of different points. For very undisciplined. Temple is complete opposite of it. Very, very disciplined, always stout, senior ridden on the lines, tough to get a lot of big plays in. Usually you have to be able to march your way downfield efficiently if you're just not going to massively out-talent them, which Maryland's not in the way that they're going to be able to do. It's also kind of weird because if I told you that that Temple had two goal line stands and only won by a couple points, you'd probably think, well, Maryland probably dominated this game statistically. They were just really unlucky to lose with not being able to capitalize on scoring opportunities. And that's really not the case of how it was at all. Temple was the dominant player in this, but it was a lot of big plays that led this. Temple's offense wasn't necessarily efficient per se, as much as they had a couple giant plays that they were able to capitalize on, and were able to consistently control the ball to an extent. Like, they weren't able to just march, 80 yards down the field, 12 plays, dominating style. It was like one play, 75 yards, or a 5-play drive, with one big 50-yard pass play. But Maryland's safety play was atrocious in this game. I mean, they got lost on a slot fade where it wasn't even in the same neighborhood as them. Got lost on a 75-yard touchdown where he took a horrific angle. I mean, really, Maryland's safety play cost them this game in a lot of ways. And I think if they had even just, mitigate the damage level, I don't know if Temple is able to win this game quite equally. So on the, probably the more germane, because we want to talk about if Maryland can scare any of the big boys in the Big Ten, what they looked like. So like I said, I thought their defense was okay when they weren't giving up free touchdowns, but that's, again, if you give up free touchdowns in your Maryland to Michigan, Ohio State, you're going to have a bad time, right? On offense, which I think is probably the more interesting thing overall, since they put up so much points. You have Loxley, they're on a lot of RPOs of all these great running backs. It was pretty simple. They got their butt whooped up front. Their offensive line just could not consistently generate holes. I'm actually super impressed that McFarland got as many yards as he did. A lot of it I felt he was really making it himself. I mean, he's a small guy, but the dude is hard to get down. Almost reminds me a little bit of Jaquiz Rogers with probably a bit more shiftiness and speed, but just how he gets so far behind his offensive lineman that he's tough to see. Very reminiscent running style back when Jaquiz was at Oregon State. But I digress. I mean that was the big thing to me. Josh Jackson was constantly under pressure and clearly did not look as good as he did in week 1 or 2. Really looked shaken in that game. But it comes down to they weren't able to rip off the chunk plays they were used to, go to 75 yards. So they got some, decent size ones, 15, 20, 25, right? But they weren't able to take it to the house, and they weren't able to dominate the line of scrimmage at all consistently. And that's how Maryland pretty much was last year. They weren't as boom and bust, right? They put up like 270 yards, which is not good, but it's not like what they were last year, which is like less than 100 yards or like 600 yards. So clearly an improved team. Quite a bit, but it's improved on last year. This isn't maybe what people were hoping after the win over the Syracuse Orange, who looked terrible again against Clemson. Might be some shakiness there. I think that this is just an improved version of last year, which is probably what you would realistically expect after the off-the-field problems they had, and then everything that went on with them. So probably realistically, probably the most disappointing team in my standpoint over last week is probably not going to be who most people think it is. But to me, it is Mississippi State. So Mississippi State all last year and even this year had pretty gaudy top 20, top 15 S&P plus numbers. Analytics loved them and thought they were a great team, but the eye test didn't always reach it there. They were 7-5-4. Their record didn't reach it there, but they're in a super hard SEC West. So it was like, what is this team really? And they come with a very well coached Kansas State after Snyder retires, but really very much Bill Snyder playbook type of a game for sure, and didn't look good. Now, to be fair, Tommy Stevens was clearly hurt, right? I mean, he was atrocious throwing the football. I mean, just beyond terrible. And I've watched him play enough when he was at Penn State to know that he is not as inaccurate as he looked that day. They didn't use his legs as a threat. Like, he was clearly banged up. They said he was going in today. They brought in the freshman who looked like a freshman. Some real promise there, but deer in the headlights when it came to truly drop back and be able to throw the football. On offense, they did run the ball pretty well, which is actually pretty good considering the fact that their passing game was atrocious as it is. My concern is the passing game going to get all that much better, right? Especially when you go up to better competition than Kansas State. And if it's not, the running game is not going to put up almost 5 yards a carry, which it ended up doing in this game. Just really disappointing. And that, like I said, maybe you can say the injuries, but it seems like something where might linger throughout the year. I don't know if you're just going to expect that they're going to get better. And once this competition gets harder, it's just going to get worse for them. This offense could get pretty rough. And I love Joe Moorhead. Joe Moorhead's my guy, but not a whole lot of exciting offenses, though. To be fair to him, his team is not inherited to what the type of deep state that he wants to be able to do a whole lot for. On the defense side of the ball for Mississippi State, tale of two halves a lot. Really, they looked very bad the first half. Kansas State kind of really took it to them. And I mean, the yardage wasn't giant, but you got to understand this was a super low possession game. I think both teams had 8-9 possessions. I mean, it was the Kansas State killed the clock special, right? Miserable type game. They want to muck you up and be able to play to overcome their talent disadvantage. They really moved up and down the field in the first half, put up a good amount of points. Second half was completely different. They only put up 279 points. To be fair, though, that they did have a kick return for a touchdown. So especially in a low possession game, that doesn't matter quite a bit when you get a drive taken away from you. So, and then they kind of turtled after that. I think once Stevens went out and they were able to adjust to what the new guy came in, which I'm sorry I don't have his name in front of me. I think they realized that we'll just take our chances on this. And it ended up paying off. I do think the Mississippi State defense is really good in the long run, but I think compared to an offense that's really going to struggle, disappointing that I didn't feel like it felt like their analytics was not accurate to what they were. And the weird thing is it's probably not going to change massively enough. I haven't checked it out yet, but given the yardage disparity in their favor, that I do bet that their win expected was probably 60% in this game. But disappointment, like I said, overall. So probably the best played game. Yeah, no, I can definitely say this. The game that you watch, you're like, wow, I think these are two good teams playing, which I really didn't expect to be saying after the first 2 weeks. But BYU USC. Now, BYU upsets at home in overtime. It was really, like I said, a great game. Both teams looked good. This was not a situation of, we'll get it to when we talk about Kentucky, Florida, where you're kind of going, this is entertaining, but I'm not sure I'm buying that these are two teams that can beat other guys. And I'm surprised with BYU, right? Like, they got destroyed by Utah, which, again, undefeated Utah. Let's go Utes. They got, surprise shot. They should not have. They beat Tennessee in a game. Tennessee yacked it away. Yeah, Sean, I understand that Tennessee is actually in S&P Plus way better than the ranking is, and it's probably not as bad as that first horrific loss against Georgia State was. Okay, I get it. Still, though, that's not something that's all inspiring confidence on you. And then in this game, they look competent. They didn't run the ball particularly well, and clearly that's what they want to do. But their freshman quarterback is a guy, man. Like, you can see he's got all the talent in the world. Has a little bit of the wild side, threw a couple picks for sure, but a lot of athlete, a lot of talent there. While his receivers aren't the greatest, they're good enough to get open. Unlike the last couple years, where I've been not a fan of BYU. They look well coached. They need to get a new offensive coordinator and get their head out of their ass a little bit and kind of welcome to a more interesting offense, I think, especially when they have a quarterback, I think, who can be a lot bigger of a run threat in the game. But I was really impressed about what I saw in offense. And again, wasn't like USC's defense was giving free yards. A lot of the stuff was contested. They were able to get pressure on them with relatively consistency. They mucked up their running game. 3.3 is not a good average to be able to run the football. Just good game overall by BYU. Probably, USC had the advantage numerically in here, but not, this isn't like a massive statistical breakdown. This is like 55-45, maybe 60-40 in it. For USC, they have something in their quarterback. Now, he threw 3 picks, and one of them was pretty bad. But when you got to put that, it's pretty much all on his shoulders. He's a true freshman. This was not a Bo Nix scenario, where Bo Nix had one great drive that everyone remembers of him and talking him up, right? Forget that he was freaking terrible for the rest of the day. In this case, he looked very good. He looked like he had command of the offense, a good-looking ball, freshman mistakes. Fine, deal with it. It's going to happen. Probably didn't run the ball as well as they would like, but BYU is a pretty darn good defensive line, so that's not like super shocking. I think in the end, if I trusted their head coach, Clay Helton, like, at all, this is a team like, man, once it starts getting rolling, could be really good at the end of the year. I don't trust him at all, but I'll tell this, when Urban Meyer indefinitely takes over this team, because, come on, obviously it's going to happen. He's got a pretty good building block there. Their recruiting is pretty embarrassing for USC right now so far, but the core people they have it is good. And watch them, because if they could get it together and be something that nobody win the Pac-12 shockingly and nobody wants to see in the Rose Bowl. It's not out of the possibility here. So let's move on to Penn State Pitt. So I think a lot of the warning signs we saw for Penn State last game against Buffalo took hold here. And that is really a lot of what they were last year, and why I think their Ricky Ream, I believe, their offensive coordinator is just – he's wearing Joe Moorhead's pants, has got his playbook, but it just is not the guy. They were so big play reliant. They had 3 big plays that it was essentially their entire offense and couldn't move the ball at all. Yes, I understand this is a weather game, so that does need to be noted. That does kind of the ultimate equalizer at all points. But we take the fact they could not run the ball against Buffalo, and they could not run the ball against Pitt at all, with the exception of like a 90-yard run they brought off. If you take that away, I mean, they could not move the ball consistently at all. It was real disappointing by their offense, and they were really lucky to win this game. Touchdowns long runs are super fluky anyway. If they didn't hit that, they were seeing some serious problems. And the thing I probably see most concerning is on both their lines. Their offensive line gave up a ton of pressure. I mean, just massive amount of pressure to Sean Clifford. And yes, again, Pitt has a good offensive line. They blitz a lot, but they look confused. And you were hoping that the offensive line woes were behind them after last year, when they seemed to finally get a core together. As I said in the preview, they lost their 2 best guys. You're hoping that the recruiting talent could take hold, but it looked rough there, and rougher than it should, right? Like, I mean, they were guys in Sean Clifford's face consistently. On the Pitts, and then let's look on defense for a second, is they could not get pressure, weirdly enough, as it is on Pitt's quarterback, who really tore them up. I mean, great job against the run. That's serious. That's a huge boon in your favor, Penn State, because you could not stop the run at all last year. So Pitt, what the hell are you doing? You try to run the football way too much. I appreciate that you finally decided to pass the ball 50 times, which was the right way to go, but it was clear you get no space. But I was very surprised the lack of pressure. The one thing Penn State was always able to lay its hat on is they have a bunch of dudes. Like Gross Matos is a dude on their defensive end. What it seemed like is they couldn't get pressure up the interior, and they were really chipping Gross Matos quite a bit. So real disappointing there. And John Reed, who their cornerback, nickelback cornerback, really got picked on quite a bit. And that was my concern after a couple injuries of them coming back. But we do have to say this. Pat Narduzzi, what are you doing? It is 4th and 1. You are down 7 with 5 minutes in the game. Why are you kicking a field goal? That is goddamn insane. I guarantee you, even if you made the field goal, your win probability would have gone down lower than if you missed the damn field goal. This is the goddamn Falcon situation from a few years ago all the way over again. Luckily, ball don't lie, missed the field goal, lost the game. What the hell are you doing? Pat Narduzzi is clearly a Mark D'Antonio disciple in a lot of ways, in his just refusal to stop running into stacked damn boxes, despite all contrary to the evidence. But he does not have any Mark D'Antonio's balls to actually go for it and win the game. Idiotic, stupid. You cost your team a chance to win. You deserve everything bad that happens to you, and you're kind of a trash person for being with Sparty's Bash program. Also, Sparty, no! Feels good to be able to say. It's been a while since I feel like we've had a true, beautiful Sparty no moment, losing to Arizona State 10-7, and just the worst job. And so for those who haven't seen it, please allow me to give you the end of the game. Somehow Arizona State goes like 70 yards to be able to go up by 3 points when they have like had 100 yards all game. A lot of this was their defensive tackles getting out of their rush reins on stunts and them hitting a big play. Finally, that's always seems to be open against Michigan State. Go in, take the lead. Okay, that's real bad, but honestly, your defense is still awesome. It was really fluky how they ended up getting there. Like, okay, we can let that go. They get a first down to get in the field goal range on a pass interference penalty where the defensive back doesn't even touch their receiver. Now, to be fair, Michigan State people, yes, you got hosed by officials most of the game, but that pass interference was terrible. Go in, spike the ball. Let like half the play clock run down for reasons, I guess. Decide to put the field goal team on at the last minute. It's like a huge fire scramble deal. Field goal team gets on. Ball snap, kicks up, good. Going into overtime. Ref throws a flag. Too many men on the field. Wait, picks up the flag. Nope, wasn't too many men. You had 11. Gets called by the video booth that, yeah, actually, you do have too many men on the field. Here's my question. The field goal team is pretty much the same 11 men each time. Who is that person that's out there that is never part of the field goal team that's like, no, guys, I got this. I'm part of the team. All right, enough schadenfreude for a second, despite how much I love to be able to do it, but Michigan plays Wisconsin this week, so I'm terrified for the repercussions. In some ways, this is a really encouraging loss for Michigan State, which I know sounds weird. Listen, man, they dominated this game statistically. Like, they had 370 yards to about 180 yards, most of that coming on Arizona State's last drive. They had 100 yards in penalties that really killed them. They missed some field goals. Like, Michigan State had no business winning this game. And this, as a Michigan fan, this is not the type of thing I like to see, because this is classic Michigan State just absolutely is going to blow themselves up with a good team type of the year. Their defense is so damn good. It's unreal how good their defense is, honest. I mean, their defensive line is one of the best in the nation. They're good everywhere. They can be, if you can protect a quarterback long enough, I think you can run 4 verts on them, is what really everyone should be doing all game. Running against them is just a waste of goddamn time. Michigan State's offense looked competent and okay. Brian Lewerke looked like he was a Big Ten level quarterback. And given how just horrendous their offense was last year, that's really disappointing. Facts. honestly. Now, they have no margin for error, really, on offense. Like, a holding penalty is going to kill them, pretty much, especially when they play better defenses than Arizona State. But the fact they are competent means they're absolutely going to frustrate the hell out of one of the Big Ten guys and beat them. Winning the Big Ten, it seems way out of grasp, given style. We're talking about like the number 80th offense in the country compared to, the 119th. But still, that's clearly going to happen. All right, let's move to Kentucky and Florida as we try to run through this. I don't want to take too much time. So remember in USC, BYU, I'm like, this looked like a competent game between two good teams. Kentucky, Florida looked a lot like the Florida-Miami game was, which was not a competent game between two teams. It was kind of a hilarious mess in a lot of ways, with Florida in the first half and Kentucky in the second half. Now, let's be fair to Florida on this. Franks actually looked pretty damn good. He was 12 for 17 for like 186 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. I mean, because come on, Frank's still going to throw a pick. He's Franks. Before his injury, I hear he's out for the year. That sucks. And to me, that probably goes your ceiling in a lot of ways, because the backup came in and looked fine probably for what could be expected on the road in it, but certainly didn't look great. There's a reason Franks was starting. And they got down, and a lot of reasons they got down was what it has been. They found some explosiveness on offense, but they didn't find consistency on offense. And that's what I was really hoping for under Dan Mullen's second year, is more consistency on it. And then Todd Grantham with Grantham specialing it, with just giving up some huge plays by the most obvious blitzes that sometimes. For Kentucky, I'll say this. You looked a lot better than I really thought. Last year was lucky. I mean, let's just be honest. You were like 40 in S&P plus. Like, you really weren't that good of a team. But to go 10-3. But I think your program does legitimately have something here. Your new quarterback looked like he has something. Threw for 250 yards, which is something that can never be said last year. The defense looked pretty good until it didn't. Competitive, I think, in the East. I mean, Georgia's still going to kill you, to be clear, but a lot more competitive than I really thought. For Florida, your ceiling that we were hoping for is gone. You're not competing in the East. You're probably going to get blown out by Georgia. I mean, yeah, guys, I don't know what to tell you here, but it's not what you want. I know you want to be the badass that's going to come and take. I was hoping that you had a chance to make the leap forward. I don't see it happening. 3-0, good on you. Listen, get who you were last year, have it be a little bit more consistent. The good times to compete are ahead. Don't get down on Mullen, even if this team does end up being a little bit shaky at times for it. Now, finally, we can talk about it. I'm so excited. Anybody who knows me knows what I'm going to talk about. That is the greatest game of all time every year, and that is El Clasico. Oh, guys, this is college football hipster. Oh, this is the good stuff. Oh, it's the good stuff. I'm still jazzed about it. First of all, this game took like 6 hours, which is what you want from like a terrible football game like this. Now, if you actually go, that would suck. But when you're at your couch, you can flip to other games. It's great from it. So 6 hours, which certainly had an effect on a play. It came in at 18-17, which is just an awesome, terrible El Clasico score. That's just so good in so many ways. And then the game is decided when Iowa, for some reason, decides to run, punt with like 3 minutes left and not even trying to get the first down because they couldn't run the ball all day, punts. Iowa State's gunner whacks the goddamn kick punt returner. Just levels the dude out, which hits them on the back. Iowa recovers. It runs the clock out because Iowa State's out of timeouts. Punting to winning. God damn it, Kirk Ferentz does it again, pulls a rabbit out of his hat. Unreal. I mean, I don't know what to, from like an actual analysis of this, I don't know what to tell you. Like, Iowa is Iowa, right? Like, they're probably going to show up at home and beat somebody they shouldn't, or maybe go to Michigan and win in a game they shouldn't because Kirk Ferentz decides to actually coach. Besides that, they're going to run, punt. They got 10 out of 17 third downs, which, despite them being relatively short, is very unlikely to be able to continue. They had more plays, but they averaged far less per play. They held the ball time possession. They had 100 less yards. Iowa State lost this game because they turned the ball over twice when they shouldn't. I mean, this was it. Like I said, it was Iowa. Congratulations, you're going to go somewhere between 9-3 and 7-5, depending on how your close game luck drive rolls. At the end of the day, it's your Iowa. You've seen it all the time. You're going to run idiotically a zone stretch out of the I formation, strong formation. Your receivers are still not good. Nate Stanley kind of explode in any direction at any point. You're Iowa State. You dominated the game. Purdy looked pretty good. I mean, I think you're going to be relevant in most areas in the actual Big 12. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see you come out of the Big 12. Yes, Northern Iowa, I know what happened, but again, guys, they dominated. They should have won this game. They just got Iowa. I don't know another way to put it. But again, oh man, it had everything you wanted. Sloppy fumbles, Dew getting wrecked on a punt, weather delays, just idiotic Iowa, fat men doing dumb things. Watch Elastico. It's the only thing I can really say for you. So, did we learn anything of this week? I think what we learned is that there's probably no one from tier 3 that's going to make a huge jump, but they probably are going to be dangerous to the tier 2 teams. And again, probably not the tier 1s more than anything else. Remember, this was 0 ranked teams that played each other. But it was actually it's probably the most entertaining week, I would say. Like LSU Texas was clearly the best game so far, but that week was kind of crappy. I guess maybe Michigan Army, if you weren't dying like I was at the beginning of the day, but it wasn't a great day. This is like great games all the way through that were really fun and entertaining. But if you wanted to call it the calm before the storm, I think that's fair to say. I mean, next week we have Texas A&M, Auburn, I believe. You have Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Notre Dame, like games that are really going to start mattering between conference foes. I guess Georgia, Notre Dame is in conference, but national championship quality teams. Like, let's go. College football starts next week. I, for one, man, I can't wait.